Well, we got a new agenda since I left you today. Mhm. We got the livestock one for this one.
Oh, that's the minutes.
Yeah, it is, right, thank you, sir. See, I met with Wright today, that's another reason I'm a little cautious.
Cold area. Yeah. Problems have a screen.
Good evening. I think I need a motion to open up public hearing for the fiscal '22 budget.
I'll make the motion, we open the public hearing for the fiscal year 22 budget.
Second.
I'll second.
Patty. All those in favor? All righty, thank you. Well, back in the South, for those of you that may or may not know, I'm more likely to get something from you all than you are to get from me. I had a pulmonary doctor appointment today, and they had to go for about an hour and 10 minutes without oxygen, and they were pretty happy with the results. So, but I'm still taking some low level oxygen, so that'll be for a while until I can wean off of it completely. So, the purpose of this is for the budget workshop for fiscal 2022. So, I guess we'll open it up for discussion.
Mayor, would you like me to go ahead and kind of just get started, or?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, each of you have in front of you an Excel spreadsheet, the same Excel spreadsheet that I made copies of and passed out to the citizens here so they can follow along, or if they have any questions along the way, they're more than welcome to ask any questions. But I guess I would just like to start by thanking everybody for allowing me to get this going, get this together. It's been going on in the last year, and the city has actually done very well. From a revenue standpoint, we really did not see the effects of our revenue as so many other municipalities have across the United States. We actually did not lose any revenue last fiscal year. Fiscal year 21, we're actually sitting pretty good. You'll see in your spreadsheet, the first column, the green column, is the FY21 budget, and that is the amended. So that is not where we started when we originally did the FY21 budget last year, about this time last year. And this is the amended version because we have amended it twice. So these are our final numbers for FY21 as far as the budget goes. The second column, you'll see it says current period, and that is our year to date. That is what we've either called as of today. Now, my numbers are going to be a little bit different than yours because Sandra had just done some AP today, but there shouldn't be a significant difference in my numbers as far as the current period in your numbers. The only reason why I didn't print new sheets for everybody else is because the citizens have the same things that you did, and I just wanted everybody to be on the same page and looking at the same thing. The first column, the purple, is the FY22 budget. These numbers come from multiple different sources, depending on the revenue that's collected or the expenditure that we're going to be spending for FY22. With that being said, as far as the revenue goes, council members Lyle and Thrasher and McCormick, when you were Mayor Pro Tem there last week or the week before. And we actually had a really good meeting going over the budget in general, how I come up with the revenue that we're expected to collect for this next fiscal year. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, a lot goes into what we present as revenue collected. For instance, when we look at the property tax, if we look at it, we budgeted $255,000 in property tax collected in FY21. To date, as of today, we've actually collected almost $290,000. So we've actually collected more than what we anticipated last year. And that's really just based on growth. We didn't know last year how much we were going to be, how much we were going to be growing. We didn't know what new homes were going to be completed. And that's always going to be something that's going to fluctuate. We may, see an increase even more this upcoming year based on the new developments that we have coming in, the new rooftops that are going to be completed, and the new customers that we're going to be receiving by the end of FY22. So, I do expect the property taxes to actually be more than $290,000, but at this point, based on what I'm seeing in the next couple of weeks and to see if anything else is coming in, I really want to wait for this next month before the June 16th adopted budget to see where we are on the revenue year to date, because that will really help determine if we need to increase or decrease any revenue. As far as the planning and zoning and permitting revenue, which is in the second section, that's the Fund 120, we have seen an increase in those numbers as well, and we anticipate on receiving more even this upcoming fiscal year based on the rooftops that we're going to be in, subdivisions, final plats, preliminary plats, building permits, inspections. So all of that ties into it. And working with Jordan and working with Jerry White on a lot of these upcoming developments really helps us get an idea of the number of additional homes that we're going to be seeing this next fiscal year. In the far right column is my comment section, and I tried to add in more explanations than I did last year. With some of the line items that are just either necessary or they're just a standard dollar amount, or it's something like health insurance or property and liability insurance, those numbers are just going to be what they're going to be. But if you have any questions on any items, please don't hesitate to ask. So anyway, we're looking pretty good for this upcoming year in revenue as far as planning and zoning and even general government revenue. As far as the utility
I have
fund.
a quick question, if it's okay.
Sure.
The American Rescue Act grant that's coming in, I know Statham was slated to get approximately $890,000 or $880,000 from the federal government, but the budget here, it's a little confusing, the way it's spelled out on how we can spend the money, when we can spend the money, and how the grant is broken down. And I would like a little bit of clarification on A, when the funds are dispersed, and B, when and how we can spend them, because it looks like we're not able to use any of the American Rescue Act grant money by the way it's worded in here. But I understand if we get the deposits in time, these deposits will show up. We'll be able to show these deposits as revenue. Is that correct?
Correct. So this whole thing has been a little bit tricky. It's been I would say it's been confusing, and I would say a large majority of municipalities, or those trying to figure out how to either allocate that or spend it, it's been confusing for a lot of people. So the American Rescue Act has allotted quite a bit of money for states. And within those states, the states are to allocate a certain dollar amount to municipalities based on population. For municipalities of more than 50,000, they get slated a certain dollar amount. For municipalities that are less than 50,000 population, they receive a certain percentage of their general fund budget. Now, where they came up with these numbers, I don't know.
It was 75%.
Well, I'm saying where they came out, what general fund budget did they use? You know, and which version, if it was our 2020 or 2021, did they use? Did they use an amended? Did they not use an amended? I don't know. The only thing that I have at this point in time is a dollar amount that the city of Statham is supposed to have allocated. Now, the way that the American Rescue Act reads is that they're going to be in two disbursements. They're supposed to be within 60 days of when they released the American Rescue Act, I guess, how they allocate it, within 60 days. So the first disbursement is supposed to be within 60 days, about a month ago. So I'm going to say within the next 30 days, we should be receiving something. Now, they also made it a point to let you know that the numbers that they originally sent out to everybody is, at this point in time, it is not set in stone. They could change, they could increase, they could decrease. We don't, at this point in time, we really just don't know what we're going to get. And the second part is going to be dispersed by the end of 2021. And then we have up to, I believe, 2 years to spend it. Now, with that being said, based on us receiving, if you remember this fiscal year, but last year, we received $109,000 through the CARES Act. They're probably going to hold us very accountable for keeping track of all of our expenses of the money that we receive. Which is fine, you know, we did just fine with the CARES Act. We were able to prove where we spent the money. Now, we did not qualify to receive all of the money that they had originally allocated to us. Like, we qualified for $164,000. We actually only received $109,000 because we could not justify the difference. Largely because of how it needed to be spent. We just didn't spend enough, really, to, because we're small, you know, like COVID protection, and, you know, people were putting up the plastic shields on everything, and a lot of larger cities or a lot of larger municipalities were putting more money into the protection of city hall, city buildings, staff, and whatnot. We just don't have that much to do. So anyway, with that being said, I think that,
But based on these months, right now, what we have in writing, there's only two things that the city qualifies to use those funds for when we have them.
really.
One is our water,
Well,
and two is sewer infrastructure.
Correct.
And
as
four
of right
things
now,
listed, but
Yes.
we only qualify for two of those. So you can't just, first off, it's not in here because
it's
we
not in
don't
here
have
because
it.
we've not received it. And
So we
I,
can't spend money we don't have.
correct,
And we can't account for money that we don't know could be less than what they say,
correct,
could be more.
correct.
So that, we know that it's not here for that reason, but when we have it,
Mhm.
hopefully they'll clarify, but as it stands right now, there's only two things that we can use those funds for.
Water and sewer infrastructure is basically all that I see that we would qualify for. There are 4 categories that you can receive the funds. The first category is to respond to public health emergency or the negative impact of the public health emergency, which would be assistance to households, nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as travel and tourism. The second category would be to respond to workers performing essential work during COVID public health emergency by providing premium pay to eligible workers. Essential workers, I think essential work has always been one of those that, you know, actually Jordan and I just had a discussion about it just earlier today. You know, in our minds, and this is how I know it probably wouldn't work, but in our minds, Jordan is essential, because if something happens to our water or our sewer, then, you know, we depend on him to be there to fix it. So he is essential to the city of Statham, his position. But when I went to go and try to justify that using the CARES Act for reimbursement for essential workers, that was denied, because it was not considered an essential worker at that time. Essential worker would be EMS, fire,
Police.
first responders, and police.
Okay.
Yes. So,
So can we use some of these funds for the police department?
well, I don't know the details of that. I'm going to say, at this point, I'm going to say no. Because at this point, it is no longer, we no longer have that portion of the emergency. Not like we did last year when everything was in chaos and we didn't know what was going on and nobody wanted to work and everybody was afraid to go to work. That is still up in the air, because at this point, a regular police officer, you know, may not be considered essential under the guidelines of the American Rescue Act. I don't have any details on that, other than just my experience of completing all of the grant reimbursement for the CARES Act. It was hard. It was very hard for me to prove that even our police officers were considered essential. So, yeah.
Not me.
Yeah.
So
the
I have a
third-
couple of questions for you moving forward. So just to clarify, the American Relief Act fund is not included, it's not allocated in here as a revenue.
It is not. If you notice, I'll explain that first,
Sure.
of how I put that in the budget for when we do get the money.
Okay,
Okay.
and then, I guess my next question before we jump ahead to anything else. If I understand correctly, our proposed budget for fiscal year 22 is $416,983 balance. Is that correct?
At this point, yes. 413,983.
So is that out of balance in anticipation of the funds we're anticipating getting for
No.
the coronavirus, or is that a coincidence?
No, this is just our first round. So I'm not worried at this point on completely balanced, because I need to hear your ideas first.
The $400,000 is a lot of money to be out, so we're going to have to do some
Yes, I agree.
significant trimming.
But we also have, some fund balance that we are not using, that we could use if we needed to. Like I said, I would really prefer to hear what council would like to add to the budget. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to increase our budgeted revenues based on these next couple of weeks. So, like, for instance, we still have 3 months worth of lost and lost that we've not collected. And it's hard I really need to see what these next couple of, these next 2 or 3 weeks, what kind of revenue we're going to be bringing in. And on top of that, the planning and zoning revenue portion, we've got some other developments that I have not included in here. Now, is it going to equate to $400,000? No. But at this point in time, when any department has wanted me to include something in the budget, that's without being vetted by council at this point. So I would just ask that, I understand the $416,000 difference, but there's probably a lot in here that's going to change between now and then.
It would be nice if we could just put the number in here and work off some anticipated budget. We're anticipating the receiving, if we're guessing, or, you know, that's kind of what we do sometimes in a budget. It's a good guess based on what we did last year and the year before. It would be nice if we could anticipate, certain incomes, so we're not wasting time. But I understand if you don't want to put it in here,
Well, would you do that in your personal budget?
well,
Think
my
you're gonna
personal
get
budget wouldn't be
$6,000?
$400,000 over either,
Well,
or 40,000 or
but you're
four,
saying you
whatever.
want anticipated funds, but we don't even know how much we're going to get.
We do know how much we're getting.
No, that's what they're saying, but it can vary. So we need to wait, and she said that it's 60 days out, so sometime probably in the next 30 days, that will be deposited. Is it the amount that they said? Maybe not.
Right.
So
My thing
we
is
need to
that-
wait
is
until
that-
it's actually
I understand.
in the general fund, then we can put it in a line item. I mean, that's the way we run our
It's
budget.
the federal government, so it's about the most secure source that there is.
Well, I mean, our thoughts on it are, if we can't handle that money and how much it is, then we have to assume that we need to trim 400. I know that we're gonna get something, but not knowing what it's going to be, we can't just assume that we're gonna have enough there to make up that difference either. If we find out we do have that amount of money that we can make up the difference, that's great.
Right.
We can go back and take a look on how to balance it to zero. But as it stands now, without that money and knowing what we're getting, I have to work on the assumption that we're out $400,000
But
from
my point
expenditure
was,
to revenue. I understand what you're saying, but
my point to that was, okay, we trim it to zero, we go through the process, and then the money comes in 2 weeks, and then we have to go back, all the way back through, and put all the money back before we just took it out. And it's kind of useless.
Yes.
It kind of sounds like basically what's happening is allocate money that you're not assured of. But it sounds like you want to have expenditure to allocate towards that money coming in. So would it not be better to maybe just have an idea of possibly a roundabout number where you think you might be, but have what you may want to spend on it during the budget session to say, okay, the money received from this federal line item would be this, possibly this amount, but this is what we want to allocate expenditures. So you can talk amongst you during the hearing specifically for that dollar amount, because I do agree, you're always going to project. Everything in the budget is basically a projection. To the best of your ability, you're adding numbers, what you think you're going to receive, and you're going to line up your expenditures to equal those things. But in this case, you're receiving money outside of what you're normally going to have. So why not maybe next budget hearing bring things forth that maybe you want that money to go to for, versus not having an idea of what you may want to, or when you do receive it, then come up with how you want to allocate the money at that time. Whether it be a project, because it's specifically, and yet there's not clarification to the expenditure totally, so that would kind of, maybe by then you'd have the guideline also to discuss with knowing how much money you have too. Just a thought.
Thank you. If you did the guess, where would you put that line item?
Well, I have mixed feelings about the American Rescue Act. Do I think it will receive something? Yes, I do. But I believe, my opinion is to be, the money is to be used for specific areas for a reason. And I think that really it's a blessing that we are receiving this money. I think as a city, I'm trying to think of how to explain it, but I guess think of it like I don't think that it's something that we should include in the budget. I think that we should work off of real numbers that we have currently and base what the real numbers are, based on the revenue and the expenditures, that we allocate to the best of our ability like we normally would with any other year's budget without this money. When we get this money, let's just say that, we get some of it this year and we get some of it next year and it totals $850,000. We're going to have $850,000 that the Department of Treasury is entrusting us to spend on the 4 categories that they have set as the 4 places that we can spend that money. Statham has a lot of projects that we have probably needed to do for a number of many years. From what I'm understanding and from how I guess how I see it is we have anywhere between 50 and 70-year-old water and sewer lines that need replaced. And if we have $800 and some thousand that we're going to be receiving from the Department of Treasury, I think that we should use that for areas that are very costly to any city, which is one of the reasons why cities have so much trouble spending the money in the first place. So if we have $800,000 that we're going to be receiving from the Department of Treasury, I think that it is an opportunity for the city of Statham to make the repairs or replacement of infrastructure that's really just been necessary for quite some time. Now, the details of where these lines are, I don't, 100% know. I know that we've got some issues on Broad Street. I know that some of the lines over here are 70 years old. We've got some that are 50 years old, some water lines. So I guess my whole point is I think that we should work the budget like we normally would work any budget and stay within those means. And when we get the $800,000, we can really use that as an opportunity to upgrade and enhance some troublesome infrastructure that's throughout the city. So the whole reason why I didn't include that in the budget, one, because and I don't want to make any assumption that we're going to be receiving $400,000 and then we turn around, we start allocating, and then in reality we only get $375 because for whatever reason they have determined that we're not going to get that much. So I think to stay within our means at this point in time, I would like to take a look at the first round numbers and say, well, that's way too much here, or we need more here, and let's base it off of the real numbers that we have. That would be my request. If you want me to put in a guesstimated amount of, 450,000 or whatever it is that you want me to, I would just be concerned that
Can I make a point real quick?
Yeah, sure.
It appears as though you've set the budget up with it being over very close to the amount of the first draw that we get from the federal government, that you actually are anticipating us getting these funds, and then when we got them, everything just kind of fell into place. How the money is supposed to be spent. I understand they want us to spend it on water, and I understand our needs for the water. What I don't understand is how the federal government can dictate and be the arbiters of what a small city like Statham's intimate needs are on a local level. They can't just say, you have to spend it all on water, you have to spend it all on high-speed internet. You know, that's gonna be up to us. In my opinion, we can spend every dime of this money on water, and it will actually, provide relief in the water portion of our budget. So if the water portion of our budget is $680,000, and we take the 440, then we only have a balance of 220 to come up with. That leaves us $400 to use in areas that we see fit. It might sound kind of confusing, but, you know, if we're getting the money and they want us to spend it on the water, we can spend it on the water, but we can also take relief from that portion of our general budget and spread it out into other areas and projects and where we see fit, not the federal government. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but your water revenue, it should be used to go back into
Right.
water. You're saying take that money and utilize it for something else because
No,
we have
no.
this free money coming in.
No, that's not what I said. I said, let it offset the cost of our existing water budget. We can use that money to offset the cost of our existing water budget and still be in compliance.
I don't know, I have a problem taking money out of the water budget, but
Just, Mayor, can I ask a question? I think I can help you, Dwayne.
Okay.
If they receive the money, could it then be put to the line where, let's say the city starts a well, and then we receive the money. The money that was budgeted through the general fund, could that money then be put into there, seeing that the project started before we received the money, but hasn't been finished?
That's one of the questions that a lot of people have had as far as infrastructure. So when they tell you that one of the categories is water and sewer infrastructure, that's going to be enhancing the water in the city.
Right.
So it wouldn't be for salaries, it wouldn't be, to offset those
No,
costs.
I wasn't saying that, it wouldn't enhance the water system, it wouldn't enhance the drilling, it wouldn't enhance our exploration. It would actually enhance what we're already doing.
That's what I'm asking, and then when the money was received, if we start the project for the well, if that happens, we receive the money that was allocated for the well through the budget, could that money go into that line item, then the money that was allocated dispersed to other line items that may be different kind of projects?
I would think theoretically, yes.
Okay.
Kind of like a reimbursement
Right.
type scenario, and then the money that we spent, we could reallocate.
So I have another quick question. So we redirected the funds, the SPOS funds for water exploration, but like you said, that was not complete yet. But is there any way to, change that around or manipulate that where it's best?
Well,
it
it's
was
This
the
SPOS
Walton
fund.
group. We didn't take from SPOS.
it was
We
our,
redirected the
It was an
Walton
art grant.
fund.
Right.
Oh, yeah, the ARD
And,
grant.
and dedicated it, and it's in a special,
It's in a restricted
a
funds account.
restricted fund to be used for water exploration.
Right,
And we said that we would like to drill 2 wells.
right.
So if we have the funds and the guy is doing a final, check on the one location at Hillman, right?
Right.
And, that puts us one step further towards drilling our first well.
Right.
And wouldn't it make more sense if we're gonna use quote-unquote free money, use it for a second well.
Right.
Okay, but
That's
that's
what I was saying.
800,000 that, you know, if you use 450,000 of it, and then you use the other 450 for something else, but there's a good opportunity to possibly have 2 wells
Right,
this year
right.
and put us
That's why I was
more
bringing
in
that up, was saying that we can actually let it enhance what we already have,
Yes,
going for us.
One of the things I just want to point out too, sitting back here and listening to this, the thing that concerns me is the council talking about allocating monies to other projects. Our main focus should be improving our water and sewage systems, and anything above and beyond we have already budgeted, that's free money, should be kept towards that, not allocated to other projects, when our primary focus should be our sewage and water, because we have new communities coming into our city, and we need our infrastructure improved on. One of the issues going back many years is our council reallocating money all over the place and nothing ever getting completed. I think we need to stay focused on our water and sewage and stop thinking about other little projects until we get those main things done. We can't support a larger community if we don't have a water and sewage system. When the main line breaks on Broad Street, do you think these folks here in these front rows are gonna sit back while you put something else somewhere else? They're gonna want that sewage replaced, and we need to keep those monies where they are. And stop thinking about different projects.
anybody on Broad Street, that's our oldest water lines, that's our old sewer lines. From Railroad down 6th Street, all the way down to Broad, and we've had several instances since I've been in office, emergency situations, and it comes all the way down to Jefferson and goes that direction. That is like 70, 75-year-old sewer lines. And we've been doing repairs since I come into office. And that water line is well over 50 years old. So what's the life expectancy on a sewer line?
I believe they're both built to bigger than 50 years.
Years. So we're really on borrowed time for the sewer lines, which were put in with terracotta pipe, and it's all turning to earth. So I know up by Mr. Jackson's house, that was a major issue. 6th Street, there was 2 major issues the first 2 months I was in office. So, you know, and then the water lines are 50-plus years old. I mean, let's face it, nobody can live without water and sewer. And they can lose their sense of humor real quick. So,
I definitely don't disagree, with allocating money towards water. I think I've been pretty vocal about that, the whole time, for the entire city. Which kind of comes back to, brings us back around to where we were with this budget. If we're going to move forward with the projects as we have now in this budget, and then use that money possibly as reimbursement for water and the water projects, then we still have to look at cutting over $400,000. Because, again, we're not promised any certain amount of money by this Relief Act. So, you know, if we want to move forward with our projects, we're going to have to, at least for now, assume that we're moving forward without this amount of money, because we don't know what it is.
Right.
You know, if we get it, that's great, but, you know, if we don't get the $800,000 that we're hoping for, that still leads us back to the point of being $416,983 projected over budget currently. So we have to look at it from the standpoint of something has to be cut. And if it can only be used for water, if this relief money can only be used for water, that still means something has to be cut. And I don't see any way around it. So it's going to fall on us to go through these line items and figure out what has to be cut in order to try to make this budget balanced.
That being said, can we resume? Because the first page in the quarter, what's anticipated coming in, and then it goes into expenditures. April?
The first section is the legislative expenditure, that is mayor and council. That includes, the salaries, property and liability insurance, communications, and stuff. You can look through there, the salaries obviously stays the same. I know that, council member Lyle wanted to increase the Sunflower Festival Committee budget. I don't know where you would like to, 2,000 or 2,500, I think is what we were talking about.
I think I would put 2,500. Because we don't know how many employees is gonna be working that day.
Does the money for the employees come out of that line item, or would it come out of overtime?
It would come out of overtime.
But it's charged back in the fiscal,
Oh, okay.
I guess. That's kind of how it's been.
The Beautification and Tree Committee, now, as you know, the Beautification and Tree Committee, I guess the idea of that committee also includes, us being a Tree City USA, and to offset some of the expenses for typical leaf and limb debris and tree removals. We have included that in this line item instead of adding that to the Public Works Department budget,
Okay.
because we get credit for that.
Right.
So, that, I included, 3 tree removals at $10,500 and $3,500 worth of tree planting based on a conversation that I had with, Mr. McCormick probably a couple months ago now. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
So,
Real quick, since then, the Beautification and Tree Committee has met, and we've identified some needs throughout the city. And we have a need for we're requesting $45,000 for several different projects around town. Three new signs at the entrance, at each entrance into the city limits, 3 new granite signs with stonework around them, fixing the lights over on the Cow Hill path, several different projects that we identified. So we're asking for that amount, and that also includes the, we had a different amount for tree removal than $10,000. We had more in there for tree removal and tree maintenance than the $10,000 based on what we spent historically. Because the maintenance and removal came out of Public Works and went into tree beautification and.
correct. I just picked an average number of $3,500 per average tree removal.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
And the next hearing, we'll be able to clarify the beautification committee's needs more specifically. But in order to move forward, we can just go on to the next line item if you like.
$5,000 is a lot of money. What are you making those signs out of?
Granite.
You have any other questions under legislative? General government, that's account 150, and we really don't have anything in here that's out of the ordinary. We have the group health insurance, that's pretty much a that's a set price. The deferred compensation, we have 3 participants, that's based on, what each, deferred compensation is based on what the employee and the employer puts into that. I did allocate $50,000 to city attorney. Right now, as of today, we're at $36,000. We could probably take that down, to probably $40,000 if we wanted to do that, assuming that we won't be in as much trouble in FY22.
Let's try 40.
I'm sorry?
Let's try 40 and
I allocated $18,000 to technical. That's a decrease from last year from $25,000 budgeted, and that is based on renewal agreements that I've received. I do have 3 proposals from IT companies who would like to either, who would like to earn the city's business. We can take a look at those maybe at next meeting, but just for rounded numbers, they were pretty much all pretty close to being the same. So, but that's decreased from last year because last year, if you remember, we did some upgrades in City Hall that will not be accounted for this upcoming fiscal year.
needed.
I'm sorry?
It won't be needed this year
Right,
because
correct.
we've already done those.
Correct. $5,000 for typical repairs and maintenance, $6,500 for rental and equipment. Now, you will see an increase in that from $1,800 up to $6,500, and that is the rental of our postage meter and the rental of our copier. And what I've done with that is, what we've done in the past is we have allocated a certain percentage of the copier and that expense between departments. And the police department has their own copier at this point, and instead of trying to break up all of the percentages for water, for sewer, for public works, it would just be easier to take the allocated funds in each of the other departments and just put it into one line item. So I collected all that and just put it under general government. Let's see, what am I at here? $12,000 for dues and fees. That is an increase, but that's also because I took allocated expenses that were in other line items and just collectively put it into dues and fees, so you'll see other decreases that offset that increase. Trying to clean it up, really, is what I'm trying to do, so it's kind of all over the place. But the $12,000 in dues and fees, part of that is our GMA membership, which is based on, we have Zoom, we have dues and fees that come from the GBI for all of our alcohol licenses each year, for the agreement that we pay for the stipend, the alarm, our merchant fees, shredding services, and other memberships. So all of that will be included in the $12,000. Utilities, that's pretty standard. Building and building improvement. That is a decrease from last year, as you know, because we renovated City Hall here. However, we are leaving $8,000 in the budget this year to replace both City Hall doors, and both of those to be ADA compliant. And those were, the price quotes for the doors were really, we would receive some that were $4,000, and you'd receive some that were about $6,000 or $7,000. So kind of taking the average between the two, we just collectively decided that $4,000 a door would be a good average cost to replace these doors. Replacing the doors was a recommendation when we had Captain Kane come in and perform our inspections after the renovation. That was one of his recommendations, that we needed to do an upgrade, was replace those doors and to make them both ADA compliant. $20,000 for Smart Fusion, that's under software. That is also a decrease. The reason why there's such a decrease for this year is because if you remember last year, MuniCode was part of that, and that had been paid in this current fiscal year, so we should be good there. And I just left a $5,000 contingency just as an in-case. But does anybody have any questions about general government?
I know we're getting close on time, but I looked at the bottom line for the expenditure subtotal for general government, and I was wondering why there was such a large jump from, the 2021 budget to 2022. We go from 381,000 to about 546,000. It was, I added all those line items together, and it totals up to 378,585.
Okay, well, maybe that's.
Definitely double check that, but I think that's gonna be a significant decrease for our overall bottom line.
All these in this column were three.
All of them in the P.
Yeah, and that makes sense, but it's in Excel, so maybe I just didn't add that.
Yeah, that's
Maybe I
gonna,
didn't add all the columns right.
that's gonna add back right around $168,000.
Dang,
Good
good job, Gary.
When you hit something in Excel, sometimes
A lot of money everywhere.
formula. Okay.
Yeah. Couldn't tell you how those numbers got there. I mean, I know I get it, but anyway, I don't know what all that included.
Sometimes there's a ghost, ghost numbers you can't see in there that will add up. You can't see them until you tab in. If you're messing around with Excel, you can tab in and then you see it come up. You see the number.
Yeah,
When you go into that cell,
Gary, tomorrow I'll send everybody an updated version of this, just double checking, making sure that there aren't any hidden cells, because there very well possibly could be. Because maybe do every other one, so there might be something that I accidentally inputted in between a couple of the lines that are showing up there that shouldn't be. So let me, I'll just send an updated version tomorrow and get that bottom line number more in line with what I believe it is. Any other questions on general government? The accounting expenditure, the next line item, I put in $51,000 for the, $50,000 for the audit, and that is to complete the, FY19 and to complete the FY20. And the next section is municipal court. And that's pretty much very similar to last year's. We really haven't added anything to that. Most of those expenses are really just, pretty much just certain percentages that we have to pay out. We really don't have a whole lot of control over a lot of the municipal court expenditures. If you have any questions, Tracy's here, and she could answer them much better than I could. But I will say that what I did do with the court budget is I removed salaries and the FICA out of court, and I put all of that into the police department. So the police department salaries are going to have an increase, if any other reason, just, for court salaries to be included in police department. Moving on, the next department is the police department. The police department, to include court, would be, is a staff of 11, and that would include 2 new hires and include the K-9 handler compensation. So obviously you would see an increase in all of the personnel line items. You've got the overtime that I'm hoping to stick around the same. If we hire 2 more officers, I would expect to see the overtime go down. Right now, especially now that we're 1 officer short. Actually, we're 2 officers down. We're 2 officers short because we've had 2 officers leave in the last month. That they have been experiencing more overtime now, offsetting the 2 officers that are no longer there. So if once we, hire the 2 officers, replace the 2 officers, and if we can get 2 additional officers for FY '22, then I would expect to see the overtime significantly decrease. Now, with that being said, the dollar amounts that you see for group health insurance, for FICA, for, the deferred compensation, all of that is included with the 2 additional officers. So, keep that in mind. Workers' compensation, and you'll notice this throughout the whole budget, the workers' compensation has been allocated a lot differently for this fiscal year '22, and the reason behind that is when I first started, I didn't have anything to do with the cost or the allocation of the workers' compensation. It was and when I did the workers' comp renewal for this year, I was able to get an actual breakdown of all of the expenditures in the policy. So I was able to allocate the cost of the workers' compensation accurately based on department versus just taking a guess and saying 20% to water, 35% to police, 10% to city hall, or however that was allocated at last year's renewal. So, and the renewal, DERMA, and including the workers' compensation, they're on a May to May year. So it kind of throws everybody off because they're not on a January calendar year and they're not on a July fiscal year. So we just kind of have to do the best we can to work around that. Property and liability insurance, that is also a significant increase. Last year we budgeted $13,800, but we've already spent $35,000 this year. And so for next year, I've based the budget of $38,000 for property and liability on the 21-22 renewal rate plus 10% because that's what they tell me to do. They said if you want to figure it out for budgeting purposes, add 10%. Last year it actually increased 7%, but 10% is a good number to try to stick around. A breakdown of costs. So I was able to allocate it to the department appropriately versus just an average percentage. Let's see here. Uniforms, $10,100. That is really to uniform 2 new hires, but that also includes 2 new officers that will need to be hired, in the next 30 to 60 days. So we'll have to get them uniformed as well. And
So that'll be 20,000?
I'm sorry?
Will that be 20,000 then?
No, if we hire, no, because if we replace the 2 officers that have already left, and if we can replace them before July 1st, that will go in this year's budget.
I was talking about the uniform expense.
Right.
Now we have need for 4 uniforms.
Well, 2 of them will be in this current fiscal year, in FY '21. So the 2 would be in FY '22.
And the 10,000, is that for 2 complete uniforms?
That would be for 2 complete uniforms, including vests,
And that'll be for the two new officers starting in July.
Correct, yes.
The council meeting is supposed to start here at 7. Are we at a point where we can kind of turn this over to council to look it over and do questions for the next hearing?
Sure, whatever you guys would like to do.
I get the feeling that
If you guys would like
probably are only
to,
halfway.
you guys want to schedule another budget workshop between the next, week or two?
2 weeks.
Well, we have one June 3rd,
Okay.
and that's just,
How many are scheduled total?
12, 13 days.
How many are scheduled?
So the 6th, and then the 15th would be voting.
Or it's June
The
3rd.
3rd, I'm sorry. The
June 3rd
June.
is the next public hearing for the budget.
Yeah.
And then the final adoption would be June 15th.
And
But I'm
we-
saying, if you guys want to have another workshop between now and the 3rd,
I would think we need one, so that we can follow the departments.
I agree.
So
I mean,
when,
do you want me to throw out some dates, or, I mean, do you want to
We
do
have
this
we have the
next Tuesday?
newspaper deadline to contend with also, don't we?
If
With
we
that
just,
being on a Monday?
no, I would need to get it out to her tomorrow to get in next Wednesday's paper. We could do it next Thursday if you guys would like to do it next Thursday.
Okay, that'd be great.
Now, I'm sorry, the 27th. So if,
Can
do
we?
you guys want to start it at like 5:30 or 5 o'clock, or?
No, I need it at least 6 at the earliest.
so the 27th? What date?
Thursday, next Thursday, it's not your high school graduation, I don't know if that would affect any of y'all.
Does anybody graduate or affect the graduation? You guys, let's plan on next Thursday, the 22nd at 6 o'clock? 27th.
27.
7th at 6.
All right, 5/27 at 6. And in the meantime, I'll just take a look at my Excel and see if those numbers added up incorrectly, but I'll send that out tomorrow.
I make a motion, we adjourn from the fiscal year 22 budget workshop.
We're going to close it first. Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, now, a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Okay. Thank you all, and, sorry it, didn't get finished.
Next Thursday, did you be here?
Yes. No, I haven't.
Anybody want water?
Anybody want water?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Hi, everyone, love Chief.
Um, Can you do Zoom,
It's already on.
with Cameron?
Well, the meeting is open, but no one's joined.
Okay. You-
I emailed the link,
Good.
Yeah, that's great. I emailed the link this afternoon.
Okay. Good evening. At this time, I'd like to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks to the veterans and their families for their sacrifice. It is greatly appreciated by all. At this point, it says citizen input, but my understanding is we have a update on a committee.
I assume that's me.
That was what I was told.
Okay, great, yeah, I was wondering why I was.
We were gonna do some report.
Yes, sir. My name is Kurt Bogner, I live at 1969 Broad Street. I guess first I'd like to welcome you back, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
It's good to see you back. I'm hoping your health is progressing and.
In the right direction.
In the right direction, great. I tonight, I guess briefly, to give the citizens and the city just an update on the Tree and Beautification Committee. I guess this is our budgeting time of the year, so I guess felt it would be important for me to I guess let the city know and the citizens know what we've been doing and what our progress has been in the past several months. I guess if you've driven down through downtown, you've noticed that we've done, I guess, some significant work to plantings up and down the street, also on directly in downtown, adjacent to the businesses. We've done a significant amount of weeding, planting, mulching. We've also, in the past several months, at the beginning of the year, did a significant tree planting on Broad Street. We did some maintenance to the various parks and trying to keep those areas from, I guess, becoming, going back to the wild, I guess, as it were. So I guess, again, with it being the budgeting season, I felt it would be a good idea for the citizens to know that your tax dollars, as far as the beautification and the maintenance of the downtown area and trying to keep the general atmosphere, I guess, more weed-free. I guess, again, I felt it important to let people know that your tax dollars are greatly appreciated and that we are trying our best to expend them as efficiently, as effectively as possible. I guess in keeping with that, I mean, I know we're going to have some wrangling as far as the budget is concerned. I think that happens every year. And we're going to be asking, as I guess a lot of committees and departments do, we're going to be asking for a little bit more money this year. And again, we greatly appreciate that money, and we want the citizens to know that we are allocating that, and we are trying our best to efficiently give the city their best bang for the buck. In keeping with that, we rely largely on volunteer help. I should say almost exclusively at this point on volunteer help. So we're always looking for more help from the citizens as well as from the city. So I guess I would move forward with that with some observations and maybe some requests on not only my behalf, but on other citizens and the Tree and Beautification Committee, and input that we've received from other citizens as far as what they see and what we see that may need improvement, and some areas that, in my estimation, have been neglected, to put it not lightly. I guess I'm just going to run down, I guess, just several areas that I think definitely need some attention. I guess we've asked for this in the past before, as far as maybe some help from the city that wouldn't necessarily require money. It would probably require more manpower than anything. It might require a little bit of money that, you know, may be some discretionary funds that the maintenance department has to expend. But, with the downtown area becoming busier and busier, and the businesses in downtown putting more and more money into their businesses, I think it's important that the city tries to keep pace with those businesses as far as maintaining the city property, maintaining easements, maintaining the streets in general, maintaining the sidewalks, maintaining safety issues, maintaining a number of items that may seem very obvious to me and others, but maybe not quite as obvious to the city and other people who may not see them when they're maybe not working around them or constantly exposed to those areas. I know we've got a number of issues, and I'm just going to run down several of them just very quickly. Again, I think these are areas that are not necessarily aesthetically in need of repair, but are more than likely either health concerns or safety concerns. I don't have these in any specific order, but I know there was some talk about the Cale Hale Path, which has had when it was first installed, had a number of lights along it that had been destroyed, and these lights, I've lived 2 doors down from this, have been missing from that path for the past 15 years because they were broken by vandals, and were never replaced. Now, I know the city had that budgeted, and they were meant to be replaced last year, and there's electrical run to them, but we still haven't seen the lights. I don't know what happened to the lights. I heard that they were purchased and they went back. And again, I think the money was allocated towards that. So that's one thing. Anyone can walk downtown and look at the sidewalks and the improvements that were done along Railroad Street that are in a continual state of disrepair. I mean, there are numerous areas where there are missing bricks, there are cracked bricks, there are a number of trip hazards. There are also dozens, perhaps, of broken railing uprights that I don't understand whose responsibility this is, but that's another thing that some of these things have been broken for years, and now we're getting to the point where they're becoming a safety issue. You know, in keeping with that, the brick facade at the front of Bill Mundy's building has been in a decrepit state for the past 2 years, and the city we haven't taken any action on that. The front of that building also looks extremely decrepit. It doesn't have any maintenance, it seems, to the front of it at all. The downtown area, as you're coming into downtown, coming up over the railroad tracks, I guess as a beautification committee, when we try our hardest to keep the downtown areas and the plantings look nice, it might be nice if the city could perhaps augment that area by Eddie's Barbecue, perhaps in front of the train depot, to perhaps fix the area that CSX left in kind of a state of shambles. I mean, it just doesn't look that attractive. When people first come into downtown, it's the first thing they see is just unattractiveness. The other issue that I wanted to point out is that Statham seems to be having an issue with dumpster maintenance. We have repeated complaints about Dave's Appliances and their overflowing dumpsters. We also have a problem with the restaurants that are along Railroad Street and in downtown who seem to be very, I guess, just not very good at their own garbage maintenance. And that certainly is a health hazard. Once we start migrating to the summer months, it's going to get even nastier. I mean, right now you can probably look out the back of this alleyway over here and directly adjacent to some property owners who are here to their buildings, and there's perpetually overflowing garbage out of these dumpsters. I don't know who needs to be getting on Bureau Veritas about these issues, or if we need to have some sort of meeting of the minds between the business owners, the adjacent property owners. I know the Cascos have suggested perhaps leasing or or selling the property that's directly behind us here, perhaps for a dumpster collective of some sort. But I know that situation is not going to get any better. As the restaurants get busier and busier, these dumpers are going to continue to overflow. As we get into the summer months, it's going to get nastier and nastier. I guess a lot of these issues, I know with it being the budgetary time of the year, a lot of the issues I raised, I don't think will necessarily cost a lot of money. I think really it's a matter of coordinating priorities as far as keeping the downtown area in a state that matches what the business owners in the downtown area are trying to achieve and trying to maintain. I think the city is falling behind a little bit. I know that, the COVID thing may be a little bit of an excuse, but I don't think it's necessarily a valid one because a lot of these issues have been neglected for years now. So I don't know what can be done. I don't know who's directly responsible for these things, but I know I'm not the only one to see this, and I think I'm somewhat of a canary in the coal mine as far as if these issues aren't addressed, the city's going to have, some more issues. In keeping with that, there's also I'll mention this briefly, there is still a drainage issue on Railroad Street that needs to be addressed. And I spoke to a couple of the property owners there, one specifically who's directly impacted every time we have a significant storm event. And that's not necessarily a beautification thing, but I guess it would be very much correlated to the downtown area and maintaining it as far as the city is concerned and prioritizing some of those projects.
Thank you. Let me address a few of those for you.
Pardon me?
I said, thank you for your time. Let me address a few of these.
Sure.
As far as Pig Path, or whatever you want to call it, the Cow Path, Pig Path, there was monies allocated. There were 10 lights ordered. We got 7. Company billed us for 10. We fought them for 6 months, trying to get the other 3, or take the 7 back and refund the city their money. That is a battle that has been going on for a while, but it's not done. The railings, I have been working with a company to come out, and I've got estimates. One of them was hit by a car. Somebody witnessed it. They didn't want to get the person in trouble, so the city's going to eat the cost for that. But as far as Mondays, that's about a $50,000 project. The city doesn't have that kind of money. If Bill Mundy wants to step up to the plate, I think it would be a real nice thing because that's his building. But will it happen? Probably not, because it's been, as you said, that eyesore for many years, and so I don't think he cares as a business owner, or it would have already been done. But I'm still working on that. As far as the dumpsters, I've got a problem with this one back here. It's being paid for by Subway and Cakes hasn't paid their portion, so why should we eat the cost? So we're going back and forth with a he said, she said, point the finger. It's his problem, no, it's her problem. So again, that's an ongoing thing I've been working with. So as far as the cleanup of the railroad system down here, I work with CSX. We finally got the word of what we can and cannot clean up down there, because if we do the wrong thing, I don't really want CSX to be an enemy. I'd rather than be a partner. That's how we got the fence put back up that they tore down about 2 years ago. As a matter of fact, they paid for a 4-foot fence. What was up was a 3-foot fence, and they paid for a higher quality fence, and they put back the walk that goes across the railroad tracks. There is cleanup work that does need to be done, I agree. But pretty much everything that you have addressed, I have been working on. The old saying, government is slow. You know, and I can only work as fast as I can get estimates. I only work as fast as I can get people to actually do the work. So, I do appreciate the time and the input, and you're welcome to come up to City Hall and sit down with me at any given time and see if we can work together on some of these. Again, thank you for your time and your input. The voting items on tonight's agenda, Counselor, I believe you've had some conversations and might be better to explain some of this.
Yeah, yes, Mayor. So I spoke with the applicant this afternoon. Y'all may recall from our work session, the only outstanding issue on the Ellington Farms final plat was the posting of the bonds. Unfortunately, due to COVID-related delays with the surety company, they were not able to deliver them to the applicant, and thus they were not able to deliver the bonds to the city. However, one option that y'all have, rather than wait another month, is to conditionally approve tonight. If y'all are comfortable with all the other conditions being satisfied, you can conditionally approve the final plat and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat only upon receipt of the bonds to the city. According to the applicant, they're anticipating receiving those sometime next week. So that would allow us to approve it, but not approve it until we get the bonds in place, but also will save the applicant about 3 weeks, having to wait for the next council meeting.
Okay, so if there are no questions from council members, can I have a motion to give the mayor the authority to sign the final plat upon or conditional of receipt of the agreed to bonds? Would that be appropriate?
And that would be appropriate, and that would also resolve both of the agenda items.
Mayor, I make the motion, we conditionally approve the final plat for the Ellington Farms subdivision upon your receipt of the bonds from the applicant.
Council, do we need to put in the motion the dollar amounts on the bonds?
The dollar amounts are specified, are laid out by the code. That's not something that has to be approved as far as the number goes.
It's also included in that description right this
Yeah.
year.
So I have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
So then that was the in favor, we need all those opposed,
Opposed? So it's a 2-2.
meaning you get to decide you get to cast the tie-breaking vote. You can vote, to break the tie and give a third affirmative vote.
Affirmative. And you think next week?
Yes.
Okay. Before we move on to the minute approval, Counselor, I realized today that I need to have an executive session for personnel.
Okay.
So I just need to have that on the record. Yeah.
You just need a motion from one member of the council and a second, and a vote to go into executive session.
Okay. So at this point,
Do we want to do minute approval first?
yeah, and everyone had an opportunity, hopefully, to review the work session minutes from May 6th. And if there's no questions, do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to approve the minutes from May 6th, 2021 is written.
Do I have a second? Ms. Betty? Okay, Ms. Betty is second, and all those in favor? Unanimous. So do I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, matters.
Motion to go into executive session for personnel matters.
Second. Ms. Hattie, second. All those in favor? Okay, all in favor?
You don't look stressed.
Okay, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
You made the motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Here, let me do my little spiel. The Mayor and City Council, City of Tatum adjourned into executive session to discuss matters, protected and exempt from the Open Meetings Act, specifically discuss, employment, hiring, firing, suspension, review of a public employee. No votes were taken during executive session. A copy of the affidavit resolution will be included with the minutes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
You'll second? All those in favor? Thanks, everyone, appreciate your time.
I know it was.